Good morning, students. In today's video lecture, we'll complete and enjoy reading the chapter on the grasshopper and the cricket. And this is a very wonderful poem, nature poem composed by famous romantic poet John Keats. The main theme in this poem is the earth has music for those who listen. Or we can say the central idea of the poem is the tenacity of the grasshopper and the cricket to provide us joy. Introduction to a poem. This poem is all about nature and it draws attention to the musical notes of birds and insects going on forever. And through this poem, it is said that the music is provided by the grasshopper on even hot summer noon and by the cricket in cold winter. Means every season has its own kind of joy and music. Which are the four seasons? This is a question for you. Work on it. But in this poem, we basically talk about two seasons, that is summer and winter. So, poet asks us to be sensitive enough to feel the poetry of nature. Can you identify any sound that can be associated to summer season? So please ask it to yourself and just answer that which birds or which insect sound do you listen or you hear in summer season. Poetry of the nature. You can see this insect and please name it. Okay. Now poet asks us to identify some sound that can be associated with winter season. Earlier I talked about summer season. Now we have to identify the sound of any bird, any insect or any other thing that is related to winter season. Can you identify this creature? Yes, you are very correct. We call it grasshopper or locust also. So let's talk about the poem now. Poet is John Keats. He was born on October 31, 1795. He was a romantic poet. Poetry is famous for elaborate word choice and imagery. Love for nature is a key feature in his poems, in his writings. Ode on a Grecian urn, Ode to a Nightingale, these all are his very famous works. So romantic poet means where there is much of rich of high romance or imagination, that is rich in imagery. You can see the grasshopper sitting on a grass blade. This is the poem. The poetry of earth is never dead. When all the birds are faint with the hot sun and hide in cooling trees, a voice will run from haze to haze about the newborn mead. This is the grasshopper's, he takes the lead. In summer luxury he has never done with his delights, for when tired out with fun, he rests at ease beneath some pleasant weed. So the poem is not divided into different stanza, but it is divided into two parts. That one is octave, means the portion fraction of poem in 8 lines, and in sestet. Again, the second part of poem is of 6 lines. So this all is of 14 lines and we call it a stanza. So stanza is a poem of 14 lines. So in the first line he says that the poetry of earth is never dead. It is never ending. It continues. Now he talks about summer. Like people feel that in summer or in an extreme winter, there is no sound, there is no music, there is no joy in nature. But poet says, still there is a joy of its own. Then he says, when all the birds are faint with the hot sun, out of extreme scorching hot, when all the birds do not feel like singing, and they feel like faint or kind of being dull, he says, still there is someone who continues the music of nature at this time. And all those birds, they hide themselves in cooling trees, they sleep, but still at that point of time, you listen a voice will come from or run from his. His means this is a kind of uh, fence or wall of trees or bushes. So you can listen a sound from the bushes, and or you can listen it from the newly mown mead. Means the mead means meadows. The new moon means the ground that has been just recently cut, the grass. So from that lawn, from that area, you can listen the song. That is the grasshoppers, and that song is of grasshoppers. Means in scorching hot, grasshopper continues the music, and he at that point of time takes the lead. In summer luxury, he has never done with his delights, for when tired out with fun. And he says that in summer luxuries, summer is a season of joy for him. So he enjoys it, and he has never done means he has not left singing the song. He continues it because he gets delight for it. And when he is tired out of singing for a long time with this fun, so he then rests at ease. Then he relaxes himself beneath some pleasant weed. Then he sits under the shade of some weed, some grass plant, and sits or take rest in its shelter. There's a beautiful description of a grasshopper song for ordinary people like others. It may be nothing to observe about, but he observes it so mindfully that he sings because he finds joy in this season. Then, when he is tired, when he got tired, then he takes shelter under some weed and sits and rests under its shelter. So, the poem is wonderful, beautiful. Uh, Octave, as I called earlier, 8 lines structure. It has a specific rhyming scheme. Rhyming scheme can be A B B C C B B C. Rhyming scheme is like this. You can make it out. Like your dad is A, then son and run. This will be B B, and then it will be mead lead. It will be C C, then done fun again B B and C. That's why I said A B B C C B B C. So this is a regular rhyming scheme in octave, a piece of 8 lines. So the octave talks about summer season and the joy and the music continues in summer. Now let's talk about the second portion. It is sestet, 6 lines poem. In this, the poet says, the poetry of earth is ceasing never. Cease again stops, means the poetry, the music of earth is never ending. On a lone winter evening, he says that in a winter alone, when people feel lonely because the winter nights are long, people sleep, and when the frost has wrought a silence and the nights are long, definitely execute means the frost has been executed and the frost has done a long silence in the people because people be silent or feel not very enthusiastic in these. So he says that from the stove there shrills. From the stove means that metal utensil in which people fire the firewood to keep the room warm. Means when people are alone at inside their houses and they are getting some warmth from that stove, he says that the warmth of the stove mingles with the warmth by the song of that insect. So he says that the shrill song that and his the cricket's song or sound is very shrill, kind of high pitch. So he says the cricket's song in warmth increasing ever. So with warmth of stove and with the warmth of the music of the cricket gives a soothing sleep to the person who was till now half slept. We call it drowsy when you are not completely asleep. And narrator says that cricket song seems in drowsiness means the person who is sleeping there he feels that cricket song in half sleeping state because who is half lost. He says that the person generally feel the song of that cricket and they resemble it with the song of the grasshopper who sing it from far away grassy hills. Means though its voice is high pitch shrill, not completely like a grasshopper, but still he says the person who is in his room and who gets a warmth of stove in his room and the warmth of cricket's song, he says that in half drowsiness or half slept mode, the person feels or resembles this music with grasshopper's song. So this was again a wonderful sestet. It has again a regular rhyming scheme. It was A B C as you can say ever, then frost B, then shills A B C. Again ever A lost resembles with frost and shills again shills C. So the rhyming scheme A B C A B C. The poem has some figures of speech too. You all are expected to work on it and you'll be told about this later. Like one figure of speech, I can tell you just for guess that poem is of symbols. So we can see symbolism is used here because the poem is a strong symbolism of hopes. Number one, and you can see good examples of alliterations and personifications in this poem. So this is for you. You will have to identify. Sonnet. It's a 14-line poem that rhymes in a particular pattern and divides the lines to two sections. I called it earlier octave and sestet. So there are some questions for you. Who take the lead in summer? Who hide in cooling trees? And who breaks the silence of winter? Where can we see the grasshopper in summer? So where you can find it and who breaks the silence in the winter season? Who starts leading the music in summer? You have to talk on this. You have to search all such answers. Structure of the poem. The poem is a very good example of Petrarchan sonnet that consists of an octave and sestet. And sonnet I called earlier that sonnet is a poem of 14 lines. Octave talks about summer season and sestet describes the winter. Poem expresses the love, joy and beauty of nature and I called earlier that the theme of the poem is actually the major theme is nature. The two difficult words Hedge means it's a kind of fence or a boundary that is formed by closely growing bushes or shrubs. You can see. So he says that the grasshopper sits over it and enjoys the nature. There is next is mown. It's to cut grass using a machine or an implement with a blade. So narrator it says that you can see the grasshopper sitting on that ground which is just recently cut. Okay. So there are some small tasks for you. You have to identify the rhyming words in the poem like sun, run, dead, mead, of frost and lost. Fine. Then there are some examples for personification like we say he for an insect. So he rests at ease. Visual imagery again from the poem summer luxury or personification of frost. And I gave you one task that you have to identify good examples of alliterations from the poem. So this was all about this poem. The basic strong central idea in the poem is that the tenacity of the grasshopper and the cricket to provide pleasure and joy for us, for all human beings. And the secondly, the poem is a strong symbol of optimism, hopes that beat any season, beat any weather, the music of the nature is always continue. So there is no point in calling any weather harsh or not good. If we can feel the sound, if we can feel the music, there is music with nature. So this was all about this poem. Thank you for enjoying. Thank you.